Well, the snow is melted, the sun is out, and it's time to answer questions that $5 or more supporters asked in February. If you'd like to participate by asking a question this month for me to answer at the start of April, links are below. Let's start out on Patreon, where the Executioner asks, what is the worst or most unconvincing case for atheism, i.e., the argument that lacks any logic? That's certainly an excellent question. Criticizing bad reasoning from the other side means we should be able to spot it on our own side. Before I answer, though, I want to explain why a lot of theists claim we have bad answers when they aren't, such as what caused God, or the God of the Bible is an immoral monster. If you grab those out of context, they absolutely are bad reasons, but that's not why we make those claims. We make them in response to theist arguments. One theist argument is that everything has a cause, so there must be an ultimate cause, so that cause is God. But if everything has a cause, what caused God? The argument is specifically there to point out the special pleading. Or they talk about how God is good, and you can't be good without God, and atheists don't have objective morals, and so on. If they're a Christian, that's where we dig into the horrible character of the God they believe in. There are also a lot of things we kind of misspeak about. We get certain arguments so much that we've developed our responses down to sound bites, and maybe sometimes we go a little far with them, like, there's no evidence for God. What we mean is not, there is literally zero evidence, it's just what evidence there is really bad and falls apart even on a cursory examination. But that's not the same as zero evidence. There are also some that are philosophically unsatisfying, such as, the universe doesn't have a cause, it's just there. The brute fact stance does have good arguments in both metaphysics and cosmology. Nothing in Big Bang Theory says that something comes before the universe or caused the universe, or even that such concepts have any real meaning. And metaphysics can make you confront the concepts of nothingness or non-existence and make you face the glaring contradictions and realize that these concepts just aren't even coherent. But the brute fact argument just isn't satisfying. It doesn't have that emotional hook that wins arguments. It's rationally defensible, but you need to make it come off as something other than evasion. Philosophical naturalism might be a truly bad argument. Science and rationality work off of methodological naturalism, which isn't the same thing. The difference is, when you're defending naturalism as an obvious default, a null hypothesis, you're on solid ground. When you make it self-evident, you've crossed a line into the black swan fallacy. Another one would be claiming that atheism is the side of rationality. No, atheism is just the rejection of a God. There are way irrational atheists out there. Raelians, for example, that kooky UFO religion. Absolute nutbars. But they don't have a God, so they're atheists. There are a few other things in this category, such as the free will determinism debate. A lot of atheists claim that there not being a God means we don't have free will. That's ridiculous. I believe we have free will, but I don't know that we do. The answer to this debate has nothing to do with the theism-atheism debate. Same thing with objective morality. So many atheists claim that God not existing means morality is subjective. I think I've done a good job showing that there is at least one objective, logically derived moral principle, the non-aggression principle. Flowing from that are other principles like self-ownership, bodily autonomy, and property rights. But again, people can believe that morals are objective or subjective, irrespective of their belief in God. Particularly in this century, atheism has become associated with rationalism and skepticism because of the influence of prominent atheists such as Carl Sagan, Richard Dawkins, and Christopher Hitchens. But both sides make this mistake, and I've caught myself doing it as well. They use atheism as a synonym for scientific rationalism. It isn't. Atheism is just the rejection of a God. So when theists argue against atheists by mentioning the Big Bang, they're making this mistake. We should avoid it too. Atheism isn't per se rational. Our foundational principles should be logic, reason, rationalism, and skepticism. Atheism is just something that flows from that. In short, atheists are people too. We make mistakes. Our arguments often fail in the way everyone else's do: overconfidence, category mistakes, intellectual shorthand, and selective standards. Over on Subscribestar, FunwithFacts asks, should we do term limits for Congress? If so, then what should the limit be? My opinion? There should be lifetime term limits. No fossils serving for 60 years in Congress. 25 years is reasonable, I think, given the cushy taxpayer pension they all get. You can divide that up however you want. 4 or 8 of them as president, a few in Congress. Time it out right, and you can become elected senator at the last possible moment to a 6-year term, stretching that out to 30 years, because you could serve out the remainder of your last term after the 25 years is up. And then that's it. You're done. Of course, that could be made even worse by 14-year terms to the Fed board or life terms to the Supreme Court. In any event, I'm not sure how much it would solve given the revolving door. Even the petty bureaucrats like Jen Psaki, who showed no skills other than being a willing mouthpiece to lie about Ukraine and the Euromaidan coup in the Obama years as State Department spokesperson, and her antics as White House press secretary under Obama and Biden are legendary. And afterward, she landed her own show on MSNBC, where she could continue to tell ridiculous lies to the public. And then there's Chris Dodd, who, after being the longest-running senator in Connecticut state history, became president of the Motion Picture Association until age 73. This happens so much there's even a term for it. A lawmaker or regulator, while in office, makes decisions that enable them to cash in later at a private firm, even using inside knowledge of the system to do so. It's called bureaucratic capital. Dick Cheney went from Congress to CEO of Halliburton, then vice president, where his warmongering made him millions. Dick Gephardt left office to start a lobbying agency, raking in $7 million in 2010 alone from Goldman Sachs, Boeing, Visa, and others. The SEC is particularly bad about this. All of the large major securities and financial institutions have hired at least one former commissioner or employee. Where do you think the whole too big to fail thing came from? It was lobbying from former SEC members. So yeah, have your term limits. Just don't expect them to change all that much, because the entire rest of the system will still be in place. Dickin Myanus asks, I believe you still use Windows for your productive workflow. How did previous attempts to switch to Linux on the desktop go, and what were the showstoppers? The main showstopper was that since I still needed software to run on Windows, I had to set up the system as dual boot. And Windows constantly fought with it. It, very improperly in my view, I consider it hacking, overwrote my preferred master boot record to force it to boot to Windows only. This wasn't even something they did back in the NT days. The NT bootloader itself directly supported multiple boot records into different OSs. But now, at any moment, Windows might decide to blow away your boot record and put in its own. So the only way I could get back into the Linux side was to reinstall Grub each time. Not to mention that the files I worked with on the Linux side were considered damaged by the Windows side when I booted back into Windows. It would then run checkdisk, which would cause all sorts of weirdness. A virus that takes over your boot record is generally known as a rootkit and is considered one of the most heinous kinds of malware there is. In my opinion, Windows is a rootkit, and everyone at Microsoft should be arrested under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And finally, Agony asks, are there any known methods for phishing passkeys? All the information I can find describes passkeys as being phishing resistant and not an in-depth explanation of the ways that I am still vulnerable to phishing. Passkeys are largely built on a lot of the technology we developed for Squirrel way back when. The idea is the user has a private key that no one else needs to see. From that, it generates a public key that is bound to a specific domain, subdomain, or other sort of unique origin. That means that the passkey will never sign you into the wrong website. So if they're doing this by using a phony domain name, like if they're pretending to be PayPal and they have the domain paypai.com, and in the email they capitalize the I because the fonts a lot of them use are indistinguishable between the capital I and lowercase l, don't get me started, then you could click on the PayPal link believing it to be PayPal. The passkey will not be confused. That's a totally different domain, and it'll refuse to play along. Even if you're somehow tricked into authenticating to the site, the passkey you generate for the fake site will be completely different. And if they went a step further and actually forged the domain, getting your passkey data wouldn't help them. Basically, they work by forwarding the authentication data onto the site, and in the process, get something like a password that they can then use to authenticate their own session. But in this case, all they get is a signature. Even if they got the server key, it would still do them no good because that's a public key. It can only verify a signature, not sign the challenge itself. And when the website does ask you to sign the challenge, part of that challenge is a random number that is never repeated. So it couldn't just do a replay attack where it records the response and issues the response again during its own login attempt. In that case, the second login attempt would have a completely different nonce, and the earlier signature could not be made to be valid. Passkeys can protect you from all of that, and even from server breaches. Password breaches are bad because they're secrets. Public keys aren't. You're protected from breaches because passkeys give the server no secrets to keep. With that said, there are going to be attacks passkeys can never protect you against. If your device with your passkeys is compromised with malware, all bets are off. You could be tricked into doing the initial sign up with PayPal through a man in the middle, although to work they would also have to poison the DNS entries to make an authentic passkey. Of course, if the website has a proper TLS certificate, then the browser would throw a security error. And with DNSSEC, they wouldn't be able to do it at all, although sadly DNSSEC isn't universal yet. So we've really changed the scale of the attack. They have to successfully poison the DNS lookup so they can give you their bogus website as the official domain and make a bogus TLS certificate on top of it. Not impossible, but extremely difficult. Basically, they'd have to become the real site as far as your device was concerned, and we're way beyond phishing at that point. They'd basically own the entire internet as far as your device was concerned. It'd be a lot more easy, sadly, to use account recovery as a weak link. What's the point of going through all of that if they can just do weak-ass email or SMS account recovery and take over the whole thing? But your basic phishing attack, or even a more sophisticated spear phishing attack, basically dead. Well, that's it for another month, so thank you so very much for watching. Comments for the comment god, shares for the share throne. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell, and check out other videos on my channel and like and share them as well. And please go to donate.bogosity.tv for all sorts of ways to support, including PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, cryptocurrency, or become a regular supporter at Patreon, Subscribestar, or Discord to get these videos early and ad-free and participate in live streams and AMAs like this one. Thanks again, and until next time, stay strong and be free.